Welcome to another chilling tale from the depths of the unknown. Tonight we delve into a story that has left an indelible mark on a small town, a story that has been whispered about in hushed tones for decades. This is not just a tale of ghosts and shadows, but a narrative that intertwines fear, mystery, and the unexplainable. Tonight, I will take you into the heart of a real story, a haunting that has terrorized a small town for decades. This town, seemingly ordinary by day, transforms into a place of dread as the sun sets. The townsfolk have learned to live with the fear, but the memories of those who have encountered the darkness firsthand are forever etched in their minds. This is the story of Black Hollow Forest, a place where darkness has a voice, and it whispers your worst fears. The forest, with its dense canopy and twisted trees, has always been a place of mystery. But for the Williams family, it became a place of terror. In 1992, the Williams family moved into their new home, just on the edge of Black Hollow Forest, a vast woodland that stretched for miles. The family, consisting of Mr. and Mrs. Williams and their two children, Claire and Tommy, were excited about their new beginning. They had left the bustling city life behind, seeking peace and tranquility in the countryside. To them, it was the perfect escape from the noise of the city. The house was charming, with a large garden and a picturesque view of the forest. The children were thrilled with the idea of having such a vast playground right at their doorstep. Little did they know their dream home would soon become a nightmare. But little did they know their dream home would soon become a nightmare. The first few weeks were idyllic. The family settled in, enjoying the serenity of their new surroundings. But as the days turned into weeks, subtle changes began to occur. It started with the whispers. At first, they were barely audible, just a faint murmur that could easily be dismissed as the wind rustling through the leaves. But as time went on, the whispers grew louder, more distinct. Late at night, Mrs. Williams would hear faint voices, coming from the forest. She would stand by the window, straining to catch the words, but they were always just out of reach. The voices seemed to be calling, beckoning her into the darkness. At first she thought it was the wind, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent, more human. They seemed to carry a sense of urgency, a desperate plea that sent chills down her spine. She tried to ignore them, but the whispers became a nightly occurrence. They would always begin just after midnight. The house would be enveloped in an eerie silence, and then the whispers would start filling the air with their haunting melody. Mrs. Williams found herself dreading the approach of midnight, knowing that the whispers would soon follow. One evening, their daughter Claire decided to explore the forest with the family dog, Max. Claire was a curious and adventurous child, always eager to explore new places. She had heard the stories about the forest, but dismissed them as mere tales to scare children. It was still light out, but as she ventured deeper, the forest seemed to close in around her. The trees, which had seemed so inviting from a distance, now loomed over her, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes. The air grew colder, and an oppressive silence settled over the forest. The once cheerful sounds of birds and rustling leaves faded into a thick, oppressive silence. Claire felt a sense of unease creeping over her. She called out to Max, but the dog seemed just as unsettled, his ears perked up and his body tense. And then she saw it. A shadowy figure, barely visible through the dense foliage. It stood still, watching her. Claire's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. The shadow began to move. It was slow at first, almost hesitant. But then it started to pick up speed, rushing toward her with an unnatural swiftness. Claire's fear turned to panic as she realized the figure was coming for her. It was slow at first, but then it started rushing toward her. The figure moved with an eerie grace, its movements fluid and almost hypnotic. Claire felt rooted to the spot, unable to move as the shadow closed in on her. Claire ran, dragging the dog behind her. She could hear the figure's footsteps pounding behind her, growing louder with each passing second. The forest seemed to come alive around her, the trees closing in, the shadows reaching out to grab her. She barely made it out of the forest, but the shadow never followed her out. As soon as she crossed the threshold, the oppressive feeling lifted, and the forest returned to its eerie stillness. Claire collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath, her heart still racing. That night she told her parents about the figure. She described the shadow in vivid detail, her voice trembling with fear. Mr. and Mrs. Williams listened, their faces growing pale as they realized their daughter had experienced something truly terrifying. They dismissed it as her imagination, but Claire knew what she saw. She could still feel the figure's presence, its eyes boring into her, even as she lay in her bed that night. She knew that the forest held secrets, dark and terrible secrets that were waiting to be uncovered. The days that followed grew darker. The once bright and cheerful house seemed to be shrouded in a perpetual gloom. The family could feel the weight of the forest pressing in on them, its dark presence seeping into their home. Doors would slam shut on their own. The sound would echo through the house, startling the family and leaving them on edge. They tried to rationalize it, blaming it on drafts or faulty hinges, but deep down they knew something more sinister was at play. Shadows moved across the walls even when no one was near. The family would catch glimpses of dark shapes out of the corner of their eyes, only to turn and find nothing there. The shadows seemed to have a life of their own, creeping and shifting in the dim light. The whispers in the forest became clearer, almost as if they were calling someone's name. The voices seemed to be growing bolder, their tone more insistent. The family could hear them, even inside the house, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond their doorstep. Mr. Williams saw it too, a figure that appeared in the hallway, silent and watching. He would wake in the middle of the night, feeling a presence in the room, only to see the shadowy figure standing at the foot of the bed. But whenever he approached, it disappeared. The figure would vanish into thin air, leaving behind a lingering sense of dread. Mr. Williams began to dread the nights, knowing that the figure would return, watching and waiting. Terrified and desperate to leave, the Williams family packed their belongings, but on their last night in the house, things took a sinister turn. They had planned to leave at first light, but the forest had other plans. Around midnight, the whispers grew louder than ever before. And then they stopped. The sudden silence was deafening, a heavy stillness that seemed to press down on the house. The family huddled together, their hearts pounding in their chests. Complete silence fell over the house. The air was thick with tension, and the family could feel the presence of something malevolent lurking just out of sight. They held their breath, waiting for the next move. Something pounded on the windows and walls, shaking the entire house. The force of the blows rattled the windows, and the walls seemed to tremble under the assault. The family clung to each other, their fear reaching a fever pitch. The shadow figures appeared, not just one, but many, all around the house, pressing in closer and closer. The figures moved with a sinister grace, their dark forms blending into the night. The family could feel their malevolent gaze, their presence suffocating. They ran outside, but the forest, it seemed to come alive. The trees twisted and writhed, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The shadows darted between the trees, their movements quick and fluid. The trees twisted in the wind, and shadows darted between them. The forest seemed to be a living entity, its dark heart beating with a malevolent rhythm. The family could feel the forest closing in on them, its dark presence suffocating. The whispers returned, louder, angrier. The voices seemed to be filled with rage, their tone harsh and grating. The family could hear their names being called, the voices growing more insistent with each passing second. The family barely escaped that night. They ran through the forest, their hearts pounding in their chests, the whispers echoing in their ears. They could feel the shadows closing in on them, their dark forms reaching out to grab them. The Williams family never returned. They left everything behind, their dream home now a place of nightmares. The house still stands today, abandoned and decaying, swallowed by the forest. The house still stands today, abandoned and decaying, swallowed by the forest. The once beautiful garden is now overgrown, the house itself a crumbling ruin. The forest has reclaimed the land, its dark presence ever watchful. Locals say the forest is cursed, that anyone who enters Black Hollow after dark hears the whispers, and some never return. The stories have been passed down through generations, each one more terrifying than the last. The forest has become a place of legend, its dark reputation well deserved. To this day, no one dares enter the forest at night. The fear of the unknown, of the whispers and shadows, keeps the townsfolk at bay. The forest remains a place of mystery and dread, its secrets hidden in the darkness. They say the spirits of Black Hollow still roam, waiting for their next victim. The forest is alive with their presence, their whispers carried on the wind. The shadows move with a life of their own, their dark forms ever watchful. Thank you for watching this chilling tale of the haunting of Black Hollow Forest. This story serves as a reminder of the unknown forces that lurk in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. The forest remains a place of mystery, its dark secrets hidden from the light of day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more terrifying stories that will keep you up at night. Your support helps us bring you more tales of the unknown, stories that will send shivers down your spine and make you question what lies just beyond the edge of the light. Until next time, beware of the shadows. The darkness holds many secrets, and not all of them are meant to be uncovered. Stay safe and remember, sometimes it's better to leave the unknown undisturbed.